Welcome to the Octopod. I'm Kyle Davis, Head of the Office of the CTO. Join us as we dive into the latest technologies and trends shaping business. Whether you're a tech enthusiast, a business leader, or just looking to stay ahead in the digital age, this podcast is for you. Let's unlock opportunities with technology together. Let's jump in.
Hi everyone, so this time we're going to delve into the world of cloud optimization and the power of partnership within that ecosystem. And I'm excited to be joined by Dean from Dell. We're going to really get into a little bit more detail. So we talked about cloud to ground and ground to cloud and all these joint engineered solutions, etc., which is part of a much wider Dell strategy in working with the public cloud providers. But today, let's double down on this universal storage layer. You mentioned it a couple of times, but we didn't really explain what it is.
Sure.
So let's start there. What is it in its sort of conceptual form? And then we'll talk about why in a minute.
So let's take a slight step back. We talked about some of the challenges that our customers will be facing in terms of trying to manage an environment that is incredibly complex. Our vision as part of that is to create a ubiquitous experience regardless of the workload type, whether that be inside of the data center or inside of the public cloud. So this idea of the universal storage layer is really about, if we've got a block workload operating in a block environment inside of the data center, if we use the exact same storage type and software type that operates inside of the public cloud, wouldn't that be wonderful? Why? Because you are replicating from one environment to the other. You're not having to rebuild an application. You are effectively replicating an enterprise-grade storage environment into an environment that doesn't have all the features that typically you would see from your world. And it's the same across not just block, it's the same with our file offering, with our PowerScale market-leading solution, where we've done exactly that with OneFS in the public cloud. Our data domain offering, from a backup perspective, again, we have a software-defined version of that operates inside of the public cloud as you would do on-prem. And that, for us, is what that universal storage layer is about. It's about creating consistency for customers.
So we get some inherent benefits, which we'll talk about in a minute. But one of the things we do get is that consistent operations as well, that single skill set.
You did.
And also compliance reporting, policy enforcement for data protection, all that sort of stuff can be universal then across multiple providers. And if you do decide to move a workload, well, actually, then you don't have to worry about how do I maintain aging of replications or snapshots or protection indexes or whatever, because it's all on the same platform across. It's lots of operational things that can be solved. But I think it'd probably be worth digging into some of the more technical things, I guess, the features that we bring and why they're important, if that makes sense. I'll take an easy one, snapshots.
Yeah, absolutely. So snapshots, they operate slightly differently inside of the public cloud, and it's a huge part of the cost profile typically with customers, and it's an important thing for us to understand. And when you're doing a snapshot inside of the public cloud, it's typically a full fat snapshot every single time. Now, they are important, naturally. However, what's unique about Dell's solution is that because of the way how it's built and constructed, we are taking incremental snaps. So the daily changes that are happening in terms of, for a customer, in terms of their requirements. And that helps us to be able to keep that cost profile down rather than having to take a full fat version of that every time.
And also being able to place them snapshots on the right storage tier, being able to reuse them at the speed that's needed from a business perspective is important as part of that overall. How do I use a snap for a business process to clone something, and how do I use it for data protection and all the other use cases that can get missed from a public cloud perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. And even when you start looking at things like other features and benefits, such as thin provisioning, as an example, you don't get that inside of the public cloud. We have that out of the box with our solution in terms of our block offering. And we've got other features that are going to be coming down the track as well around erasure coding, as an example. Important parts to any technical solution when it comes to storage management, as you well know.
Yeah. But I think that the thin provisioning is really important, though, because that t-shirt sizing from a storage perspective in the public cloud can lead to a lot of missed and wasted capacity. I need to provision a 1 terabyte disk for that 600 gig workload.
Yeah.
I need the 2 terabyte disk because that's how I get to the right performance point, etc. But they're all thin provisioning use cases that can potentially, be a 50%, 60%, even 70% saving on storage costs. And when storage is such a big part of cloud costs, why would you not want to make them savings? Because they could really change the overall economics. And part of that, how do we get the real true value of public cloud? Well, let's drop the cost and add the features effectively.
Yeah, it's absolutely about how do we maximize the investment that's being made when it comes to operating inside of the public cloud. And we'll talk about some of the features and stuff that we can actually, or some of the benefits we can put on later on. And equally, you've also got, on top of that, our solutions, because they're software in nature, have the ability to cross availability zones from within the cloud, and that's a huge benefit. Whereas, that's a real struggle if you're operating in a native state and you're pointing at a particular availability zone, so in an AWS or inside of an Azure. But all of these features combined, and then you start looking at deduplication. Deduplication has been huge in the market for a long, long time, especially when you're talking about backups and the environments that you're typically looking after. And that dedupe in particular, if you look at what the cloud providers provide, it's minimal, if any at all. And if you look at the solutions that we provide, where you've got up to 50 to 1 and you're not having to you're not having to take as much storage from the cloud providers for the same amount of content that's required, it drives cost again. I think.
So I was going to say the other thing that really becomes top of mind for me though is that performance piece as well.
Yeah.
Because if you're taking a database workload potentially that's been sat on-prem with maybe 25 gig Ethernet or 16 gig, 32 gig fiber channel potentially off to a NVMe array at the back end, and you take that into the public cloud, you're either going to be paying an extortionate fee for an ultra disk and capacity, or you're not going to get the same level of response. And I think that's where, again, us being able to aggregate a standard SSD type tier and provide, the accelerated performance on top of that is testament to that software capability that just isn't there in the native provider.
Absolutely. And let me give you an example. As you can imagine, we're dealing with many, many customers. Actually, if you think about where we are at the moment, we've got probably over 4,000 customers now that are consuming our software inside of the public cloud. We've got best part of 28 exabytes of data that we operate from today that we're protecting or that we're supporting as part of those offerings that I talked about earlier. So it's an established footprint. The interesting thing about this particular customer, who is very large in the insurance market, we talked about in the previous series, these two kind of siloed environments of either accelerating or optimizing. This customer was very much on the optimizing side. They recognized that cost was spiraling out of control, and they were hitting latency challenges in terms of some of the applications that they were running within the public cloud itself. And they came to us and said, look, how can you help us to deal with these bills that we're getting on a monthly basis? We can't leave the public cloud, because our business has made a decision that we want to be going in this direction, but we need to find a way to optimize our cost profile. So we help them to not only understand the workload, in particular inside of the public cloud, we drove the best part of 60% of cost saving inside of the public cloud.
Massive.
Which is huge. And we saw almost a 400x improvement in terms of performance. And it wasn't that we changed the disk type particularly. Some of them, yes, we did, but predominantly the majority of the value that we talked about were those features that we were just talking about. It's,
software layer.
It's that software layer. Yeah. It's bringing that value, because we're using the same disk type for our solutions. It's just that we're managing it in a much more proficient way.
So I think there's so much value that's available there, and I think we talked a little bit about it in the first section. Actually, was about we need to get people out of that mindset of the traditional is bad and the cloud is the only answer, and actually that fusion, that partnership of both together will unlock far more value than the disparate parts would do on their own. But how would someone consume this stuff, Dean? In what? I've got to commit with Microsoft. I have to spend some money with them. You know what I mean? You're telling me I need to buy some technology from Dell to help me do that, but I've got to spend my Microsoft bill, otherwise I'm going to get penalised, etc. How do I consume this as an end user?
Yeah, look, there's many ways and many vehicles that we can kind of explore, but predominantly everything we've talked about in terms from a software perspective can be consumed via any one of the cloud providers' marketplace. So marketplace, I get asked a lot, what is marketplace? Well, marketplace is really a shop window for the cloud providers that allows us to be able to present our solutions to the market. Now, we create a customized solution for customers so that they understand what it is that they need and what solution type for what workload. But every dollar that they consume via the marketplace will help them to decrement an agreement that they have with one of those, whether it's an EDP with AWS or it's a Mac agreement with Microsoft or even, a Google commitment. We have offerings that the customers can consume.
To get all of the technical benefit, business value, we said, but then also burn down that commit with the cloud provider. And if they don't want to do that, I assume they can buy it in a traditional manner as well and do a bring your own license type model if that's what they prefer.
Yeah, absolutely.
So flexibility and choice is what we've got.
You've got flexibility and choice, but it's quite interesting because whilst the software is part of that entity, it still needs to run on something within the public cloud. So that will naturally draw down against their commitments at the same time. It might not be as much if you was to do that model as a bring your own license, but it will still consume this type. It will still chip away any commitments potentially that you've got within your tenant within any one of those cloud providers. So you have got choice.
Choice, yeah, which is important. But I think the other part of choice is if we're talking about customers on that migration journey, either way.
Yeah.
And we talked about that in the second part about how that could be a multi-year journey and you're still going to have to manage technical debt, legacy estates. There's going to be refreshes of tech that you need to do in that period, likely because these cloud journeys aren't always short for a lot of organizations. I don't want to be buying into something that is static. So if I'm like, well, I'm all in on cloud, what happens if I need to bring something back to the edge? Or I've got a data center refresh to do, but I've got 2 years before I move to public cloud. It's like, do I really want to be buying something that's got a 5-year lifespan on it? How do we help with that more strategic adoption of technology within the landscape so that customers can get the ultimate choice of where they deploy this stuff?
Yeah, and we talked about in the last series, at the end, the potential secret sauce, in my opinion, that can help customers overcome that challenge. And one of them in particular, Dell's got a very unique offering, which is a transformational license agreement that you can put in place for both on-prem licenses or any software really that you wish to consume from Dell. So whether that be cloud-based or on-prem. And the beauty of a TLA is that in its nature, it used to be very much a perpetual license. It was wedded to a piece of hardware and we've moved on from there, where actually now it's very much it's a term-based license that allows our customers with full substitutional rights. So, whether it's day 1, month 36, 60 in terms of their operations, they can substitute that on-prem license, reducing IT debt by reinvesting that money into a cloud-based license at no cost to do so in terms of transitioning from one cloud license from one license to another.
So effectively then we've got a universal storage layer with a universal license layer almost where we can deploy that to the edge, to the data center or to the cloud within that same commit effectively from a spend perspective, which means we're protected from a strategic change in direction. We're protected around investment over time because we can make that upfront investment, get the volume discounts and then move it to the most relevant location at a pace that meets the business needs. Because we all know what happens, don't we? We think we'll be done in 2 years. We buy our array or whatever for 2 years and then the project takes 3 years and we've got to buy an extension or something happens and it comes faster. Well, this TLA sounds like it gives a lot of flexibility to be able to adapt to changing strategic needs within a customer's organization as well.
It does. Yeah, it really does. And, we were talking about this offline, and an analogy I used to use, which was very much around, I love to go to the cinema as an example. And, everyone that goes to the cinema, if you like your pick and mix, that's typically what you take. And the TLA represents that really well. And you have to bear with me, right? I know it seems really odd, but if you think about the film being your strategy in terms of cloud or on-prem, etc., and the pick and mix is really the license types that you consume within the TLA. Well, what happens if you get through a film, right, and there's a lot of noise and you don't like the film anymore and, your strategy might change, you might get halfway through it, I've had enough of this, I want to go and watch something else. But also when you're looking down in your software bag, your pick and mix, you always get those sweets at the end you just don't like, right? So if you was to take that as your software pile and use it, but wouldn't it be great if you could walk out of the film and walk into another film because there your strategy has changed, but at the same time get rid of all the sweets that you don't need and fill them up at no additional cost with the ones that you do. That suddenly becomes really interesting because you're getting best of both worlds. You can choose what you know.
All the value that you want out of that. So yeah, I mean, that's, I guess what we've got there then is we've got this broad strategy from Dell around partnering with the public cloud providers to provide this consistent operating model across all locations. Yeah. Specifically, we've got this great universal storage layer with some fantastic technical capabilities that we're not necessarily seeing from the rest of the market, which is great. And then we have a consumption or a licensing model that allows us to adapt strategically from one place to the next. So I guess the question at the end is how does someone go on this journey? You know what I mean? What's the stepping stone? How do we work out whether there's a value to this, if that makes sense?
I think if we start at the very beginning, I mean, some of this will be, don't be afraid to have the conversation, first and foremost. It may feel alien initially, but actually it's important to be honest and transparent in terms of where you are on the journey. Because there is a solution that can help. Understand the dynamic around where the customer's strategy and outcome is, and therefore how do we help with that? But also back that up with commercial, with a commercial outcome like a TCO that we've built through our education and through our learning over the years, that helps to prove the business case, not just technically, but also financially.
So what we're saying really is at the end of all this is connect with us and give us the challenge to show you that TCO exists, and we've got the tools, the models, etc., to very easily and quickly take an existing cloud environment or an existing on-prem environment and model what that would look like and whether there's an investment case to move forward. And I think it's as simple as that at the end of the day, really, isn't it? Is let's take the challenge us to prove what we're saying is true.
Absolutely. We welcome it.
Thank you, Dean, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for listening, everyone. I've been Rob Sims, Chief Technologist for CDW in the UK.
And I'm Dean Martin, the cloud provider lead for Dell Technologies.
Excellent. Thanks, everyone. See you next time.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode. Be sure to check out the back catalogue for more great insights. Don't forget to subscribe via your favourite podcast platform so you never miss an episode. We appreciate your support. And if you have a topic you want us to cover, feel free to reach out. Catch you next time.